Hi there. New Zealand's wine industry has built its reputation largely on the quality of its Sauvignon Blancs, and in general, certainly the wine on export markets is almost entirely in the Marlborough wine region at the top of New Zealand's South Island. In fact, the statistics I've seen suggest that 72% of New Zealand's Sauvignon Blanc is grown in that one region. So here at Wine Searcher, we thought we'd take a look at some Sauvignon Blancs from other parts of New Zealand. So today I'm taking a look at a Sauvignon Blanc from Waiheke Island. This is Manor War's 2023 Sauvignon Blanc. And Waiheke Island is an island off the North Island, off Auckland. It's about 18 kilometres from the centre of Auckland in what's called the Hauraki Gulf. And there you have a climate which is slightly sheltered by the mainland from rain, so it's slightly drier. It tends to be slightly warmer and slightly sunnier than the rest of the Auckland region. Manor War is an estate based in the southeast part of Waiheke Island. And the name Man of War comes from a bay that takes its name from the fact that evidently Captain Cook, when his ship anchored in this particular bay, noted in his diary that the tall, straight kauri trees that grew on the shore would be suitable for masts and spars for men of war, and thus the bay became known as Man of War Bay. In the 1980s, the Spencer family bought 4 farms near Manor War Bay and combined them with a total area of somewhere in the region of 1,800 hectares. The Spencers had made their money through paper milling and in general tend to be quite private and keep quite a low profile, preferring to let the winery team be the public face of the winery. But certainly opinion seems to be that they've been good stewards of this estate. For instance, there's been quite a lot of land has been returned to native bush. Now, the planting of vines started in 1993, but didn't really sort of get going fully until the period from 2002 through to about 2006. And in all today, there are 75 different plots of vines, and they cover somewhere in the region of 60 hectares. So it's quite a sizable estate, but really rather broken up. The estate is probably best known for making Bordeaux-style red wines, and vines for these red wines tend to be planted on free-draining red clay hillsides, whereas the white wines tend to be planted much more on sites with volcanic soils at the tops of hills, where the temperature can be moderated more by the generous sea breezes that you'll find here. The notes suggest that this wine actually comes off 4 named blocks. There's a block called Sidewinder, there's a block called South 3, there's a block called North Basin, and there's a block called Root Rake. 2023 was quite a difficult and quite particular vintage for New Zealand, particularly in the Auckland area, because there were 2 really quite dramatic weather events took place in the run-up to harvest. So in late January and early February, there were some very heavy downpours, one of them Cyclone Gabrielle, resulting in widespread flooding and damage throughout the Auckland region. The effect that the weather had on this particular wine is actually the low sunshine hours meant that it's a delicate, elegant style of wine. There's only just over 11% alcohol. It's light, it's elegant, it's fresh, and it's lifted by lively acidity. The fruit for this wine is hand-picked, and it was gently pressed as whole bunches, which should give quite clean juice. That juice was then settled and racked off any solids that had fallen to the bottom during that period of settling. Fermentation went on in a stainless steel tank, and the fermentation was inoculated with a yeast culture. Now, there are no notes about the wine's aging, but one assumes it stayed in tank because they say it was bottled in the winter, so probably for 6 months with the yeast lees there. The wines from the 4 different plots were blended, and then it was filtered into bottle. So let's have a look at it and see what we make of it, shall we? So we've got a pale greenish yellow there. Swelling it, the label says it has 11% alcohol, but the technical sheet says 11.4%, which is completely allowed. You've got a 0.5% allowance there. There are no obvious tears forming there. This is quite a delicate light wine. It'll be a dry wine, so there's not a lot of viscosity there. So let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? Gosh, the aromas are lifted and they have a very green nature. You've very much got the sort of the neckly, perhaps gooseberry, cut grass end of the the fruit spectrum here. There are notes of passion fruit, perhaps a little bit of kiwi fruit, those sort of slightly tropical but still quite green notes. And actually there are also some notes of sort of green capsicum, perhaps a flinty touch. But there's none of the sort of the richer mango style that you might get from a sort of a heavyweight Sauvignon Blanc of this style. Also, of course, no oak notes and not particularly any notes of lees. So if it did age with lees, possibly those weren't stirred up during that period. So let's have a taste. Gosh, there really is a singing acidity there. Really quite mineral, quite sharp. There's a bit of a tartness to it as well. Again, those notes of cut grass there. There is a slight creaminess to the texture. So perhaps there is a little bit of lees age in there after all. But it's not really adding sort of roundness and richness to the back palate. It's just sort of taking an edge off the tartness, which is quite pleasant. There are, I suppose, going on from the sort of the cut grass and the nettle notes that were more obvious on the aromas. There's more of a sort of a pea pod and asparagus note here that really finishes off with quite a green note. There is a touch of that capsicum, a touch of pea pod, and I think also some delicate notes of passion fruit and that sort of thing. But the mineral crispness is good and fresh. But the wine is lightweight, and that sort of mineral crispness is giving its freshness good length, and sort of those lifted grassy notes are seen again at the finish. The wine doesn't have a huge complexity or depth. I don't think this is a wine that's going to age for a long period. I think you'd be best drinking this up within a year, 8 to 18 months. But certainly it's delivering a high degree of freshness and elegance. We don't actually have a score for this vintage of this wine, but if I look at the Wine Search aggregated critics score for this wine as a whole, it's just getting an 87 out of 100. I think perhaps that's a little unfair, and possibly it's a function that this wine may well have been judged alongside more powerful, more opulent wines from Marlborough. I think its elegance and its balance probably rate it slightly higher than 87, even in a vintage where it perhaps hasn't performed to its optimum. So thank you so much for watching. This was Man O' War's Waiheke Island Sauvignon Blanc from 2023. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, do please press the like button. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, it would be fantastic if you'd consider signing up and following our channel. If you have any comments you'd like to leave, do please pop those in the comments box below. We'd be really interested to hear what you think about the wines we're talking about, the tastings we're doing, or anything else that relates to that. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, please feel free to pass it on to them. We'd really appreciate your endorsement in that way. I will leave a link in the notes below to the Wine Searcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, and hopefully you'll follow that, and there you can find not only pricing and availability in your market, but you can also see the price history, you can see the record of the performance of other vintages, you can see our critics notes, you can see what other users have said about the wine, you'll see background information about the winery, the grape variety, the region, and any winemaking information we've got there. So our aim is to put together as much information as possible to inform you around the purchase of this wine if you're interested in it. So thank you so much for watching, and I do hope you'll make some time and come and join us for another tasting in the very near future. Thanks again. Bye for now.